In suburban Atlanta, a 28-year-old graphic designer was about to cross a line she never imagined. What started as a family birthday celebration took a shocking turn when her sister publicly humiliated her engagement ring. Riley Martinez wasn't your typical younger sister. For years, she had lived in Sophia's shadow, known for her quiet creativity and deep resentment. When her sister called her grandmother's ring pathetic, Riley had no idea she was walking into a psychological transformation. Her hurt would become calculated revenge that would destroy everything she loved. What began as sibling rivalry would become the perfect crime. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Riley's fingers traced the delicate silver band on her ring finger as she and Ethan walked up the cobblestone path to her mother's house. The modest pearl setting caught the late afternoon sun, and she felt a flutter of pride. Her grandmother's engagement ring, passed down through 3 generations of strong women, felt like a bridge between her past and the future she was building with Ethan. "You sure you're ready for this?" He squeezed her hand, his gentle smile carrying that familiar warmth that had first drawn him to her during their college literature class. His own nervousness showed in the way he adjusted his tie, the good one he saved for family gatherings and parent conferences. "As ready as anyone can be for a Martinez family celebration," Riley replied, though her stomach tightened as she noticed the sleek BMW and Mercedes in the driveway. Sophia was already here. The suburban Atlanta home buzzed with the controlled chaos of a large family gathering. Carmen Martinez had spared no expense for her 60th birthday, transforming their modest living room into an elegant celebration space. The scent of her mother's famous tres leches cake mingled with the expensive perfume of relatives who only appeared for major occasions. Riley's breath caught as she spotted her sister across the room. Sophia Martinez Blake commanded attention without effort, her designer dress perfectly tailored to her lean frame, her dark hair swept into an immaculate chignon. She stood near the mantelpiece like a magazine model, gesturing animatedly while describing what sounded like her latest legal victory to a cluster of aunts and cousins. "Mija!" Carmen's voice carried across the room as she swept toward them, her arms outstretched. But Riley noticed how her mother's eyes lingered on Sophia's animated storytelling before focusing on her younger daughter. "You look beautiful, and Ethan so handsome." The introductions began, a familiar dance of family politics where achievements were subtly cataloged and compared. Riley watched her mother's face light up when Sophia mentioned closing a multi-million-dollar merger, then dim slightly when someone asked about Riley's freelance graphic design work. "Riley's been so busy with her little projects, and now with the engagement?" She gestured toward Riley's hand. That's when Sophia's attention shifted. Her perfectly manicured fingers, adorned with her massive diamond wedding ring that Nathan proposed with 2 years ago, stilled mid-gesture as her gaze locked onto Riley's modest pearl ring. The room seemed to hold its breath. As Sophia crossed toward them, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor with predatory precision. Riley's pulse quickened. Some primal instinct recognized danger in her sister's approach. "Oh my God, Riley, is that supposed to be your engagement ring?" The words hit like a physical blow. Riley felt heat flood her cheeks as conversations around them gradually quieted, family members turning to witness what was unfolding. "It was our grandmother's, Abuela Rosa's ring." Riley managed, her voice smaller than she intended. Sophia's laugh was sharp, crystalline. "That pathetic little thing? I mean, I suppose it has sentimental value?" She held up her own hand, letting the light catch the brilliant cut diamond that probably cost more than Riley made in 6 months. But honestly, Riley, this is 2024. When Nathan proposed, he understood that a woman's engagement ring is a reflection of how her future husband values her. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Riley could feel every eye in the room on her. could see the mixture of embarrassment and pity on her relatives' faces. Tia Maria's hand flew to her mouth. Cousin Louis stared at his shoes. Even the children seemed to sense the tension and grew quiet. Sophia, Carmen's voice carried a warning, but it was too late. The damage was done.
Riley's hand moved unconsciously to cover her ring, a protective gesture that made her feel small and ashamed. She watched Sophia's wedding ring catch the chandelier light as her sister gestured dismissively, each sparkle feeling like another tiny cut. "I need to—" Riley's voice cracked. "Excuse me." She fled toward the powder room, Ethan's concerned voice calling after her. In the small, elegant space, she stared at her reflection in the antique mirror. Her grandmother's ring suddenly looked impossibly small, impossibly plain. She could hear the muffled conversations resuming in the living room, probably discussing the spectacle they'd just witnessed. A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Riley? Baby, it's me." She opened the door to find Ethan's worried face, his usually calm demeanor cracked with anger she rarely saw. "We're leaving," he said simply. "We don't have to stay here and listen to that." But as they made their way back through the party, accepting polite farewells and avoiding eye contact, Sophia caught court near the piano. Her sister's wedding ring seemed to mock her with every gesture, a symbol of everything Riley wasn't, everything she'd never be. The drive home was quiet, Ethan's hand warm on her knee as Atlanta traffic crawled around them. But something cold and calculating had settled in Riley's chest. As they pulled into their apartment complex, modest brick buildings that suddenly felt shabby compared to Sophia's Buckhead mansion, a thought crystallized with frightening clarity. Her sister's perfect life was built on symbols, status, appearances. Maybe it was time someone showed Sophia how fragile those symbols really were. Riley's fingers tightened on her grandmother's ring as they climbed the stairs to their apartment. The modest pearl no longer felt like a family heirloom passed down through generations of resilient women. Now it felt like evidence of her own inadequacy, a tangible reminder of everything she lacked. But as she watched Ethan struggle with their temperamental lock, the same way he struggled with his aged Honda in the mornings and their secondhand furniture that never quite fit right, something darker than embarrassment began to take root. Sophia thought she knew what strength looked like. She thought it gleamed like diamonds and spoke in trust fund certainties. She had no idea what quiet fury could accomplish when given enough time to plan. The apartment felt smaller when they returned. Riley moved through their modest living room, secondhand couch, IKEA coffee table, her designer portfolio scattered across every available surface, seeing it all through Sophia's eyes, through the lens of that crystalline laugh and the way her sister's diamond had caught the light with each dismissive gesture. Ethan busied himself making tea, the ritual familiar and comforting, but Riley found herself at her laptop, her fingers moving with methodical precision across the keyboard. Social media profiles, real estate records, the digital breadcrumbs of her sister's perfect life spread across her screen like a map she was learning to navigate. "What are you doing?" Ethan's voice carried gentle concern as he set a steaming mug beside her. "Research," Riley replied, not looking up from Sophia's Instagram feed. Perfect vacation photos from Santorini. Nathan's surprise birthday dinner at a restaurant Riley couldn't afford to walk past. And there, a close-up shot of Sophia's manicured hand wearing that massive wedding ring captioned with a heart emoji and #blessed. "Riley," Ethan's hand touched her shoulder. "She was cruel tonight, but dwelling on it, $50,000. The words came out flat, emotionless. Riley had found the insurance appraisal in a quick search through public records. Her ring is worth $50,000. The silence stretched between them. Ethan's reflection appeared in her laptop screen, his face creased with worry she'd never seen before. Why does that matter? Riley's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could feel something shifting inside her chest, like tectonic plates finding new alignment. Do you know what $50,000 would mean to us? To our future? That's not... Ethan moved around to face her. That's not who you are, Riley. You don't measure worth in dollars. But she was already scrolling deeper, documenting her sister's routines. Yoga on Tuesdays, spa appointments every other Thursday. The patterns of privilege laid out in digital certainty. Her graphic designer's mind began organizing the information, creating invisible flowcharts and timelines. She called our grandmother's ring pathetic, Riley said quietly, in front of everyone, made me feel like... She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Ethan knelt beside her chair. Like what? Like, I'm nothing. The words tasted bitter. Like, everything I am, everything we are together, doesn't matter because I can't afford to prove my worth with a price tag. Something cold had settled in Riley's chest during the drive home, and now it was spreading. She understood, with graphic designer precision, exactly how symbols worked, how appearances shaped reality, how the right image could become more powerful than truth. Her sister thought she knew what strength looked like. She was about to learn how wrong she was.
3 weeks after the birthday party, Riley had transformed her home office into a surveillance center disguised as creative workspace. Design projects covered her desk's surface, but underneath lay detailed schedules, printed social media posts, and hand-drawn maps of Sophia's Buckhead neighborhood. Her graphic designer's mind had applied itself to a different kind of project, one requiring the same methodical attention to detail that made her layouts so precise. Sophia's life operated on rigid patterns: yoga Tuesdays at 6 a.m., spa Thursdays from noon to 4, Nathan's predictable work schedule at the investment firm downtown. "Carmen wants us to help with the anniversary party planning," Ethan announced, hanging up his phone. The relationship had grown strained since the birthday incident, conversations dancing around the obsession they both pretended didn't exist. Riley's pulse quickened. Sophia and Nathan's anniversary? Your parents' wedding anniversary. Next month. Ethan studied her face. You've been so distant lately. Maybe family time would help. Perfect. Riley called Carmen within the hour, volunteering for decoration committee duties. The role granted her access to Sophia's house for coordination meetings, opportunities to study the security systems panel by the kitchen door, to note which windows faced the street, and to memorize the layout that Sophia had shown off during previous family gatherings. During one visit, while Sophia discussed catering options, Riley excused herself to use the bathroom. Instead, she slipped upstairs, her heart hammering as she entered the master bedroom. The jewelry box sat on Sophia's vanity like a small treasure chest, unlocked and trusting. The wedding ring rested in its velvet slot, the diamond catching afternoon light streaming through plantation shutters. For a moment, holding her breath in her sister's sanctuary, Riley felt the weight of what she was contemplating. This wasn't just theft. It was betrayal of blood, of family bonds that had shaped their entire lives. But then she remembered the laughter at the birthday party, the way her relatives had looked at her with pity, the dismissive gesture that had made her feel invisible. Downstairs, Sophia was discussing flower arrangements with characteristic perfectionism, her voice carrying that familiar edge of someone accustomed to getting exactly what she wanted. Riley studied her sister's animated gestures, noting how the massive wedding ring emphasized every point, how it had become an extension of Sophia's identity. "Riley," Sophia's voice called from below, "could you grab my phone charger from the nightstand?" "Of course," Riley replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. She photographed the security panel's code, visible in the small scratches around certain numbers, then retrieved the charger. As she descended the stairs, returning to play the supportive sister role, Riley felt something fundamental shift inside her chest. The methodical planning was complete, every variable accounted for, every risk calculated. Thursday, October 15th. Sophia's next spa appointment. The date circled in red on Riley's hidden calendar suddenly felt less like a reminder and more like a countdown to something irreversible.
October 15th arrived with unseasonable warmth, Atlantis autumn refusing to surrender to cooler temperatures. Riley sat in her Honda across the street from Sophia's house, watching her sister's BMW disappear around the corner toward the spa. Her hands trembled as she checked her phone. 12:07 p.m. Nathan wouldn't return from his business lunch until 3. The latex gloves felt foreign against her skin as she approached the back gate, using the code she'd memorized during her reconnaissance. Her breath came in short bursts as she punched the security system numbers, 2007, Nathan and Sophia's wedding year, hearing the soft beep that granted access to her sister's sanctuary. The house felt different when uninvited. Every creak of the hardwood floors seemed amplified, every shadow a potential witness. Riley moved through the familiar layout with ghost-like precision, avoiding the security camera's sightlines she'd mapped during family visits. Her graphic designer's spatial awareness served her now in ways she'd never imagined. Upstairs, the master bedroom held the scent of Sophia's expensive perfume and the lingering warmth of morning routines. The jewelry box sat exactly where she remembered, its contents arranged with characteristic perfectionism. Riley's hands shook as she lifted the velvet tray. There it was, the ring that had haunted her dreams for weeks. Holding the $50,000 symbol of her sister's superiority, Riley experienced a moment of profound disorientation. The weight was different than she had expected, heavier, more substantial. The diamond caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows, fracturing it into rainbow prisms that danced across the bedroom walls. For a heartbeat, she understood why Nathan had chosen this particular stone, why Sophia wore it with such pride. Then she remembered the laughter, the pity in her relative's eyes, the way her grandmother's ring had been dismissed as pathetic. Riley slipped the wedding ring into her pocket and began the staging. She'd studied enough crime procedurals to understand what investigators would look for. Drawers pulled open but not ransacked, a few pieces of lesser jewelry scattered, but nothing that would devastate the family. The bedroom window screen, carefully loosened during a previous visit, now provided the apparent entry point. She planted a cigarette butt, collected from a gas station ashtray, near the window. Sophia had never smoked, but an opportunistic burglar might have had. The detail felt professional, calculated. Riley barely recognized the methodical person she had become.
Leaving through the back door, she reset the security system with practiced efficiency. The walk to her car felt endless. Every neighbor's window a potential witness, every passing car a threat. But she maintained the casual pace of someone with legitimate business in the neighborhood. Only when she was 3 miles away did Riley allow herself to breathe. She pulled into a shopping center parking lot and stared at her shaking hands. What had she done? The wedding ring sat in her jacket pocket like a lead weight, its presence both thrilling and terrifying. She thought of Ethan grading papers at home, trusting and unaware. Of her family, who would soon rally around Sophia's crisis, of the life she was about to destroy through her own calculated malice. But mostly, she thought of the moment when Sophia would discover the theft, when her perfect world would crack, just like Riley's had 3 weeks ago. The satisfaction felt hollow and sharp simultaneously, like swallowing broken glass. Riley was chopping vegetables for dinner when her phone rang. Sophia's name on the caller ID sent ice through her veins, though she'd been expecting this call for hours. "Riley?" Sophia's voice cracked with a vulnerability Riley had never heard before. "Something terrible has happened. My ring! Someone broke into the house and took my ring!" The knife stilled in her hand. She'd rehearsed this moment, planned her reaction with the same precision she'd used for the theft itself. But hearing her sister's genuine anguish, raw, desperate, utterly broken, hit her like a physical blow. "Oh my God, Sophia, are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, but..." A sob escaped through the phone. "Riley, it was my wedding ring. Nathan's grandmother's stone reset in my band. It's not just the money, it's irreplaceable. It's our history." Nathan's grandmother's stone. Riley's stomach lurched. She'd assumed the ring was purchased, a symbol of wealth rather than heritage. The weight in her jacket pocket suddenly felt unbearable.
The police are here now, Sophia continued, her voice steadying with effort. Nathan's on his way home. I needed to call family. I needed to hear a familiar voice. Riley closed her eyes, gripping the phone tighter. I'm coming over. An hour later, Riley stood in her sister's violated bedroom, surrounded by controlled chaos. Police officers dusted for fingerprints while Nathan paced near the window, his usually composed demeanor shattered. Sophia sat on the edge of their bed, staring at the empty jewelry box with hollow eyes. They knew exactly what they were looking for, Nathan was saying to Detective Morrison, his voice tight with anger. Ignored electronics, cash, other jewelry, went straight for the most valuable piece. Riley watched her sister's face crumble with each word. Sophia had always been the strong one, the successful one, the sister who had everything figured out. Seeing her reduced to this broken shell felt like witnessing the collapse of a fundamental law of nature. The insurance will cover replacement value, but that's not the point. This was my grandmother's diamond. She wore it through the Depression, World War II. It survived everything, and now it's gone, Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible. Carmen arrived with a flurry of Spanish prayers and maternal fury, immediately pulling Sophia into her arms. Mija, thank God you're safe. Things can be replaced. You cannot. But I saw the way Sophia's fingers unconsciously twisted where the ring used to rest, how she kept glancing at her bare hand with growing panic. This wasn't just about losing jewelry. It was about losing a piece of her identity, her security, her proof that she belonged in the life she had built. As the evening wore on, family members arrived in waves. Tio Roberto promising to have his contractor friends check neighborhood security systems, cousin Elena bringing homemade food that no one touched. Each gesture of support twisted the knife deeper in Riley's chest. She found herself in the kitchen, mechanically making coffee for the growing crowd, when Nathan appeared beside her. His usually perfect composure had cracked, revealing the scared boy who'd grown up poor and understood how quickly security could vanish. I should have installed better security, he said quietly, staring out the window at the yard where investigators searched for evidence. Should have put the ring in a safe. Sophia always said I was paranoid about losing things, but you can have known, Riley heard herself saying, hating the comfort she was offering to a man she'd helped victimize. Nathan's laugh was bitter. The worst part is watching her blame herself. She keeps saying she should have been more careful, should have hidden it better, as if this is somehow her fault. Riley's hands stilled on the coffee maker. Through the kitchen doorway, she could see Sophia on the couch, surrounded by family but utterly alone in her grief. The confident, cruel sister who had humiliated her was gone, replaced by someone fragile and lost. This wasn't what revenge was supposed to feel like. Detective Alexis Carter arrived on Tuesday morning, with the methodical precision of someone who had seen too many family secrets unravel under pressure. Riley watched through Sophia's kitchen window as the insurance investigator emerged from her sedan, mid-40s, sharp-eyed, carrying herself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to finding lies hidden in plain sight.
Mrs. Martinez Blake, Detective Carter's voice carried professional warmth as she shook Sophia's hand. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. I specialize in high-value jewelry theft, and I'll be working alongside the police investigation. Riley positioned herself at the kitchen island, close enough to observe, but trying to appear naturally supportive. Her coffee mug trembled slightly as she lifted it to her lips. I've reviewed the initial police report, Carter continued, settling into the living room chair with notebook poised. But I'd like to walk through the timeline again. Sometimes details emerge that weren't apparent initially. Sophia's recounting felt like torture. Each precise detail, discovering the theft at 4:30 p.m., the immediate call to Nathan, the realization that only the wedding ring was missing, landed like accusations in Riley's chest. Nathan sat beside his wife, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder, occasionally filling in details about their security system and daily routines. The entry point through the bedroom window is interesting, Carter noted, her pen moving across her notepad. Most burglars weren't quickly grabbing obvious valuables, but this person knew exactly what they wanted and where to find it. That suggests either extensive surveillance or inside knowledge.
The room fell silent, except for the soft tick of the grandfather clock Carmen had given Sophia as a housewarming gift. Riley felt heat creeping up her neck as Carter's professional attention settled on her like a searchlight. Inside knowledge? Nathan's voice carried a dangerous edge. You're saying someone we know did this? I'm not making accusations, Carter replied carefully, but statistics show that 60% of high-value thefts involve someone with access to the victim's routine and security measures. Riley watched her sister's face transform as the implication sank in. Sophia's eyes widened, then darted around the room as if seeing potential threats in every familiar corner. The violation of losing the ring was devastating enough, but the possibility that someone in their circle had orchestrated it introduced a paranoia that would poison every relationship. Who had access to our house recently? Nathan demanded, his investment banker's mind immediately calculating variables. Family for the anniversary party planning, Sophia said slowly, her voice growing smaller. The cleaning service. My trainer's been here twice. The contractor who installed the new bathroom fixtures. Carmen made notes while Riley's pulse hammered against her temples. Each name Sophia mentioned felt like a small betrayal. People who trusted them, who would now fall under suspicion because of Riley's calculated manipulation. I'll need to interview everyone on that list, Carter said, starting with family members. The investigation intensified over the following days. Carter's questions came with surgical precision, probing not just alibis, but relationships, financial situations, family dynamics. Riley found herself scheduled for a formal interview on Friday afternoon. Meanwhile, the theft's aftermath continued ravaging Sophia and Nathan's marriage in ways Riley hadn't anticipated. She watched through family text messages and hushed phone calls as suspicion crept between them like poison. Nathan's trust issues, stemming from a childhood where promises were frequently broken, surfaced with devastating clarity. He keeps asking if I'm sure I didn't stage this, Sophia confided to Riley during a tearful phone call Wednesday night. The insurance money, he thinks maybe I needed cash for something I'm not telling him about. Riley's blood turned cold. That's ridiculous. Why would you steal your own ring? I don't know, Sophia's voice cracked, but he grew up poor, you know? He's always been paranoid about people lying about money. And now with this investigator asking about our finances, our debts, he's looking at me like a stranger. The irony was suffocating. Riley had wanted to destroy Sophia's perfect life, but she'd never intended to destroy her sister's marriage. She certainly never wanted to turn Nathan, a fundamentally decent man, into someone capable of suspecting his wife of criminal fraud. As Friday's interview appointment approached, Riley realized that Detective Carter wasn't just investigating a theft. She was systematically dismantling the foundation of trust that held their entire family together. And Riley was about to sit across from her and lie about everything. Riley's interview with Detective Carter had gone better than expected, or worse, depending on perspective. She'd maintained her composure, expressed appropriate shock and sympathy, even managed tears when discussing how violated Sophia must feel. Carter had taken notes with professional detachment, asked about Riley's whereabouts during the theft window, and seemed satisfied with the corroboration from Ethan about their quiet Thursday afternoon at home. But now, 3 days later, Riley was discovering that lying successfully to a detective was easier than lying to the person who shared her bed every night. You've been different since the robbery, Ethan said quietly, setting down his coffee mug on their kitchen table. Saturday morning light streamed through their modest apartment windows, highlighting the tension lines around his eyes. Distant, like you're somewhere else entirely. Riley kept her focus on the freelance project spread across her laptop screen, a logo designed for a local bakery that had consumed her attention for the past hour without progress. It's been stressful. Sophia's falling apart, Nathan's suspicious of everyone, the family's in chaos. That's not what I mean. Ethan's voice carried the gentle persistence she'd fallen in love with during college literature discussions. Before the theft, you were obsessed with researching Sophia's life. Now you can barely look at me when we talk about it. The wedding ring sat hidden in the shoebox beneath their bed, wrapped in an old t-shirt like some cursed artifact. Riley could feel its presence constantly, a $50,000 weight that had transformed their bedroom into a crime scene. She'd planned to dispose of it, but every potential method carried risks she hadn't anticipated. Pawn shops required identification. Throwing it away felt like destroying evidence that might somehow implicate her later. Even looking at it made her physically sick. "I'm fine," she lied, her fingers moving restlessly across the laptop keys without typing anything coherent. Ethan stood and moved behind her chair, his hands settling on her shoulders with familiar warmth. "Riley, talk to me. Whatever's going on, I said I'm fine." The snap in her voice surprised them both. Riley immediately regretted the harshness, but the words hung between them like a confession. Ethan's hands stilled. In the silence that followed, Riley could hear their upstairs neighbor's television, the distant hum of Saturday morning traffic, the steady tick of the wall clock that suddenly felt like a countdown timer. "You're lying to me," Ethan said quietly. "I've known you for 6 years. I can tell when you're lying." Riley's throat constricted. For a moment, she teetered on the edge of confession, imagining the relief of sharing this impossible burden, of returning to the person she had been before revenge had corrupted her judgment. But then she thought of Ethan's face if he knew the truth. The disgust, the inevitable end of their relationship, the criminal charges that would follow. "There's nothing to lie about," she said, closing her laptop with more force than necessary. That afternoon, while Ethan graded papers at the kitchen table, Riley received a call that shattered what remained of her composure. Nathan's voice on the other end was hollow, defeated. "I'm staying at the Marriott downtown for a while," he said without preamble. "Sophia and we need space." Riley's chest tightened. "Nathan, what happened?" The detective's questions got me thinking about finances, about trust, about all the things Sophia might not be telling me. His laugh was bitter. "I accused her of staging the whole thing. Said maybe she needed money for something she was ashamed to admit. Fertility treatments, gambling debts. I don't know. I couldn't stop myself." The image of Sophia alone in their empty house, the same house Riley had violated, made me physically nauseous. "You don't really believe that." "I don't know what I believe anymore. Growing up the way I did, when people you trust start lying, it's like a disease. It spreads until you can't trust anything." Nathan's voice cracked. "The worst part is seeing how my suspicion is destroying her, but I can't turn it off." After hanging up, Riley sat in her car outside a Target parking lot, engine running, staring at nothing. This wasn't how revenge was supposed to work. She'd wanted to hurt Sophia, not destroy her marriage. She'd wanted satisfaction, not this gnawing guilt that made food taste like ash and sleep impossible. Her phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. "Family dinner Sunday. Everyone needs to be together during this difficult time." Riley stared at the message, imagining sitting around her mother's dining table, pretending to comfort the sister she'd betrayed, while watching their family fracture along lines she'd created. The thought made her hand shake. When she returned home, Ethan was waiting in their living room, his expression serious. "I've been thinking about our conversation this morning, and I've made a decision. If you can't trust me enough to tell me what's really going on, then maybe we need to reconsider this engagement." Riley's grandmother's ring, the modest pearl that had started this entire nightmare, caught the afternoon light as Ethan gestured toward it on her finger. The irony was suffocating. She'd stolen a $50,000 symbol of love and success, but in the process, she was losing something infinitely more valuable. The man who loved her exactly as she was. Pathetic ring and all. Zoe Thompson arrived unannounced on Tuesday evening, her social worker's instincts having finally overridden politeness. Riley opened the door to find her best friend since college holding a bottle of wine and wearing the expression she reserved for her most difficult cases. "We need to talk," Zoe said, pushing past Riley into the apartment. "And don't try to tell me you're fine because I've been watching you self-destruct for 3 weeks." Riley's stomach dropped. Since Ethan's ultimatum, she'd been operating on autopilot, going through the motions of work, family obligations, and maintaining her innocence while everything inside her slowly collapsed. She'd barely slept, hadn't eaten a full meal since Sunday's family dinner where she'd watched Sophia pick at her food with hollow eyes. I don't know what you're talking about, Riley said automatically, following Zoe into the living room. Zoe turned, her dark eyes sharp with professional assessment. You've lost 15 pounds. You jump every time your phone rings. Yesterday at coffee, you zoned out completely when I mentioned jewelry theft statistics from my domestic violence cases. She set the wine on the coffee table, untouched. Plus, Ethan called me. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. He what? He's worried about you. Said you've been acting strange since Sophia's robbery, that you won't talk to him about whatever's eating you alive. Zoe's voice softened slightly. He loves you enough to reach out for help instead of just walking away. Riley sank onto the couch, her carefully constructed facade finally cracking. What did you tell him? That I'd talk to you. That sometimes friends can see things partners miss. Zoe sat across from her, professional distance maintained even in personal crisis. Riley, I work with people in crisis every day. I know what trauma responses look like, what guilt looks like, what self-destruction looks like. You're exhibiting all three. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of their ancient refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. Riley started her hands, the same hands that had violated her sister's home, stolen her most precious possession, destroyed her marriage. When had they started shaking constantly? Tell me about the night of Sophia's robbery, Zoe said quietly. Not the facts everyone knows. Tell me what you were really thinking. Riley's carefully rehearsed story died in her throat. Looking at Zoe, who'd held her through college breakups, celebrated her engagement, and listened to years of complaints about family dynamics, she felt the weight of deception become unbearable. I was glad, she whispered. When I first heard what happened for just a moment, I was glad. Zoe's expression didn't change, but Riley caught the slight tightening around her eyes. Why? Because she humiliated me. At Mom's birthday party, she called my engagement ring pathetic in front of everyone, made me feel like I was nothing, like everything I am doesn't matter because I can't afford to prove my worth. So you wanted her to suffer too? Yes. The admission felt like vomiting poison. I wanted her perfect life to crack. I wanted her to feel small and worthless, and Riley's voice broke. But then I saw what it actually did to her, how broken she was, how it destroyed her marriage, and I realized that wanting someone to suffer and actually watching them suffer are completely different things. Zoe leaned forward slightly. Riley, what aren't you telling me? The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Riley felt herself balanced on a knife's edge, confession on one side, deeper deception on the other. She thought of Sophia alone in her violated house, of Nathan's hollow voice on the phone, of Ethan's ultimatum about their engagement, of Detective Carter's methodical investigation closing in on family members. I think, Riley said carefully, maybe I know who did it. It was a half-truth, a coward's confession. But Zoe's eyes sharpened with interest. Someone in your family? Riley nodded, unable to speak the full truth. Someone who had access to the house, who knew about the ring's value, who had reasons to hurt Sophia. Have you told Detective Carter? I can't, Riley cracked. It would destroy everything. The family would never recover. Zoe was quiet for a long moment, her trained mind clearly working through implications. Riley, if you know who committed this crime and you're not reporting it, you're an accessory after the fact. That's a felony. The legal terminology hit like ice water. Riley had been so focused on guilt and family dynamics that she'd barely considered the criminal implications of her silence. Even this partial confession was creating new layers of legal jeopardy. But more than that, Zoe continued, her voice taking on the authority she used with clients in crisis, Riley, you're enabling the destruction of innocent people. Sophia's marriage is falling apart. Nathan's mental health is deteriorating. Your entire family is living under suspicion. Every day you stay silent, the damage spreads. Riley thought of Sunday's family dinner, the way conversations died when anyone mentioned security or trust, how Carmen kept watching everyone with worried eyes, and how even Tio Alberto had started locking his car when visiting. The theft had introduced a virus of suspicion that was methodically destroying every relationship. "What if telling the truth makes everything worse?" Riley asked. "Worse than watching your sister's marriage collapse? Worse than your fiancé losing faith in you? Worse than living with this guilt for the rest of your life?" Zoe's voice was gentle but unyielding. "Riley, I've seen what secrets do to families. They metastasize. They poison everything they touch until there's nothing healthy left." Through the window, Riley could see their neighbor walking his dog, the ordinary evening ritual that had once represented the kind of simple life she'd wanted with Ethan. Now it felt like watching a different species, people who slept peacefully because they hadn't betrayed everyone they loved. "I need time to think," Riley said finally.
Zoe stood, her expression mixing professional compassion with personal disappointment. "Time is a luxury you don't have. Detective Carter called me this afternoon." Riley's blood turned to ice. "What?" "She's interviewing extended friends and acquaintances now. Apparently someone mentioned that you'd been asking questions about Sophia's life before the robbery. She wants to talk to me tomorrow about your state of mind leading up to the theft." The room spun slightly. Riley gripped the couch arm, feeling her carefully constructed alibi beginning to crumble. If Carter was digging into her pre-theft behavior, connecting her research to the crime itself, "What are you going to tell her?" Riley whispered. Zoe moved toward the door, then stopped. "I'm going to tell her the truth, that you've been struggling with family dynamics, that the robbery has affected you deeply, and that I'm concerned about your mental state." She turned back, her expression serious. "But Riley, if she asks me directly whether I think you're capable of this crime, I won't lie to protect you. I can't." After Zoe left, Riley sat in the gathering darkness of her apartment staring at the engagement ring she'd been so proud of just a month ago. The modest pearl seemed to mock her now, a symbol of authentic love that she'd traded for the hollow satisfaction of revenge. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Nathan filed for legal separation today. I don't know how to keep going." Riley stared at the message until the words blurred. Tomorrow, Detective Carter would interview her best friend. Soon the investigation would focus specifically on her. The walls were closing in, but more importantly, the damage was spreading beyond anything she'd imagined. She had perhaps 12 hours to decide, confess and face the consequences, or let her family destroy itself to protect her secret. Either way, the person she'd been before that birthday party humiliation was gone forever. Riley didn't sleep. She sat on her bedroom floor until dawn, staring at the shoebox that contained Sophia's wedding ring, weighing $50,000 against the destruction of 3 marriages, and Detective Carter's narrowing investigation. At 6 a.m., she made her decision. Ethan was grading papers when she emerged from the bedroom, the ring box clutched in her trembling hands. "I need to tell you something about Sophia's robbery." Ethan's pen stilled. The way he looked at her, with growing dread rather than surprise, told Riley he'd already suspected more than he'd admitted. "I took it." The words came out flat, emotionless. "I broke into their house and stole Sophia's wedding ring." The silence that followed felt infinite. Ethan's face cycled through disbelief, shock, and finally a devastating sadness that cut deeper than anger would have. "Why?" His voice cracked on the single word. Riley opened the box, revealing the massive diamond that had haunted her for weeks. "Because she called our grandmother's ring pathetic. Because she made me feel worthless in front of everyone. Because I wanted her to hurt the way she hurt me." Ethan stared at the ring, then at her, as if she were a stranger who'd broken into his apartment. "Nathan and Sophia are getting divorced because of this. I know. Your sister's marriage is destroyed. I know. And you were going to let me marry someone capable of—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Riley set the box on the coffee table between them, like evidence in a trial. "I was going to confess before Detective Carter's investigation found me, but I wanted to tell you first." How generous. Ethan's sarcasm felt like a slap.
He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. 6 years, Riley. 6 years we've been together, and I never knew you could do something like this. I never knew either. He turned back to her, his teacher face, the one that had guided countless students through moral complexity, now focused on her with clinical detachment. What happens now? Riley had rehearsed this moment, but facing his actual pain made her prepared words crumble. I don't know. 2 hours later, Riley sat in Detective Carter's office with a lawyer her mother had frantically arranged. The confession took 20 minutes. Clinical details about planning, execution, and the location of evidence. Carter listened with professional neutrality, occasionally asking clarifying questions about timeline and methodology. You understand this constitutes burglary in the first degree, Carter said when Riley finished. Given the value involved, we're looking at potential felony charges. Riley nodded. The legal consequences felt abstract compared to the damage she'd already done. That afternoon, she faced her family in Carmen's living room. Her mother sat frozen in her chair, rosary clutched in white-knuckled hands. Sophia occupied the couch where she'd held court during the birthday party, but now she looked fragile, breakable. I need to know why, she said quietly. I need to understand how my sister could destroy my life over words said in anger. Riley handed her the recovered ring. Because those words confirmed everything I'd always believed about myself. That I wasn't enough, that I'd never measure up, and that my life was pathetic compared to yours. Sophia stared at the ring in her palm, the symbol that had cost her marriage. So you decided to prove it by becoming exactly the kind of person who would betray family? The question hung in the air without answer. Carmen finally spoke, her voice thick with years of unexamined guilt. This is my fault. The comparisons, the favoritism, I created this competition between you. No, Mama. You didn't make me break into Sophia's house. You didn't make me steal from my sister. I did that.
As evening fell and the legal machinery began its inexorable process, Riley understood that confession wasn't redemption. It was simply the first step toward facing the person she'd become. The lies were over, but the consequences were just beginning. 6 months later, Riley sat in Dr. Patricia Reeves' office, the court-mandated therapy sessions having evolved into something she actually needed. The plea agreement had resulted in 18 months of probation, community service, and restitution, a lighter sentence than expected, influenced partly by her voluntary confession and partly by Sophia's reluctant request for leniency. How are you feeling about seeing your family this weekend? Dr. Reeves asked, her voice carrying the practiced patience Riley had learned to appreciate. Terrified, Riley admitted. Carmen's 75th birthday celebration would be the first family gathering since the confession. I keep wondering if I've earned the right to be there or if I'm just inflicting more pain by showing up. Through the window, Atlanta's spring bloomed with indifferent beauty. Riley had moved to a studio apartment in Virginia Highland after Ethan asked her to leave, a request delivered with the gentle firmness of someone who still loved her but could no longer trust her. The engagement had ended not with dramatic confrontation, but with quiet acknowledgement that some betrayals change the fundamental nature of a relationship. Sophia and Nathan are trying again, Riley said, answering Dr. Reeves' unspoken question. Couples therapy 3 times a week. She says the trust is building back slowly, but differently than before, more intentional. The stolen ring had been returned, but its absence during those crucial weeks had forced Sophia and Nathan to confront deeper issues in their marriage. Nathan's trust issues, rooted in childhood poverty and abandonment, had required their own therapeutic attention. Sophia's need for external validation, her fear of being seen as inadequate, had finally been addressed directly rather than masked by material success. And you? How is your relationship with Sophia? Riley considered the weekly coffee meetings that had replaced their previous surface-level interactions. Honest, for the first time. She told me last week that my confession was the worst and best thing that ever happened to our family. How so? The worst because it confirmed her fear that people she loved could betray her. The best because it forced all of us to stop pretending our family dynamics were healthy. Riley shifted in her chair. We talk about real things now. Her infertility struggles, my financial insecurities, the way Mama's favoritism shaped us both. Carmen had entered her own therapy after the confession, finally confronting how her immigrant parents' emphasis on achievement had created impossible standards for her daughters. The weekly family dinners now included conversations about feelings rather than accomplishments, though the adjustment remained awkward for everyone involved. Riley's phone buzzed with a text from Ethan, the first communication in 2 months. Saw your art featured in Creative Loafing. I'm proud of how you're rebuilding. The community service had led to volunteer work with domestic violence survivors, helping them create visual presentations for court proceedings. It turned out that her graphic design skills, combined with hard-won understanding of family trauma, made her uniquely qualified to help other people tell their stories. I still love him, Riley told Dr. Reeves, staring at the text, but I understand why he can't love me the same way anymore. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal back to its original shape. As she left the session, Riley thought about her grandmother's ring, still worn on her finger despite everything. The modest pearl had become something different, not a symbol of inadequacy, but a reminder that authentic love required honest foundations. The person who had stolen her sister's wedding ring was gone. The woman walking into her family's future was still learning who she might become.